I'd like to welcome you back to the Linguistic Landscape and Autoethnography of Place course. And we are going to continue our process of learning some basic definitions. Today we're going to deal with the idea of discursive genealogy. And like I said about semiotics, this is not designed to be an in-depth course on discursive genealogy. Believe me, we could do more than one course just on that topic. But I do want to give a sort of working definition so that as we move forward into the workshop part of this course, you get a sense of how this works and what you're looking at and what's hidden behind what you're looking at. So let's start with a basic proposition. The linguistic landscape is constructed from multiple multimodal signs. We've already spoken about that. This is the piece that we're going to add today. That are embedded within deep historical meanings reflecting past power and social dynamics. In other words, the world that we live in isn't just now. The world that we live in, particularly the meaningful world that we live in, has been inherited. There's a history here, and a history which reflects power relations and social dynamics, and that's actually what we're going to be exploring today. So what is discursive genealogy? Well, discursive genealogy is an approach that is based on the idea that current discourses, ideas, beliefs, practices, meanings, signs, and so on, developed and transformed over time in specific contexts. So what we are using today has a history. What we are looking at today has a history. It has a deep history, and that's what we're talking about. Discourse always reflects the underlying power dynamics, the social conditions and the historical contingencies of the present and of the past, and I might point out, are consistently changing. So, of course, we're referencing work by Foucault. I'm sure you've already worked that out. But I'd like to talk about sort of, if you like, a sort of a movement, if you like. So publicly presented discursive signs, multimodal and in all their forms, have a history of past meanings, and at the same time they address larger and social cultural narratives which are present and ongoing and have histories. These histories reflect and narratives reflect current and past power dynamics between different social groupings. What I think is interesting though, and I've given you a quick graphic here to just represent this, I think we're, I would say, consciously aware of current meanings. And I think we have some cognition, I would say, of past but known meanings. However, underneath those are deep historical meanings that have been lost from sight. And actually, a full discursive genealogy goes way back into the ways in which these meanings have changed over time. Let me give a quick and I think relatively simple example. This is from a media campaign in London. Let me give away the nature of this campaign. It's called Everyone Hates Elon, not particularly subtle, but very clear. But I'd like you to look at this bus stop sign. Goes from 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Then there's a picture of a car. There's a picture of Elon Musk standing out of the car with a raised arm. Underneath it says Tesla, and then underneath that it says the swastika. So on one level, this references the usual way we promote cars, right? And sells cars. Goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or whatever it is. We have a picture of the car. We usually have a model or some representative person standing or close to the car or sitting in the car, and underneath we have the name of the company and the name of the car. So on one level, this is a classic explicit car advert. But of course, this is not a car advert. The first thing we note here is 0 to 1939. 1939 is the beginning of World War II, a really horrific period in modern history, a period that was instigated by Adolf Hitler and his desire to conquer the world and murder anybody who he didn't like. So we have a Nazi salute, and that's what the arm movement of Elon Musk is about. And of course, Elon Musk actually gave a Nazi salute at a Trump rally. So we have this connection between the immediate history and narrative and discourse that we know from the television of what Elon Musk did, and here it's re-represented in this picture. Of course, what is a Nazi salute? A Nazi salute is an agreement with Hail Hitler, right? An agreement with the great leader, a fascist ideology where everyone needs to bow down to the will of one person. Now, an interesting fact that you probably know as well is that Hitler facilitated the development of a car called the Volkswagen, in other words, the people's car. Elon Musk, he himself has developed a car. And notice the name of the car on this sign, the swastika, which is very clever if you think about it. So it's basically making a connection between Elon Musk, his car, and Nazi ideology. And of course, the aim of this is to make these cars undesirable. So the exact opposite of what advertising usually does, which is make cars popular. Here, the aim is to make the car unpopular. Let's look at another example of this. I kind of like this one because it's particularly clever. Let's start with this is a New York sign. It's a fake sign, but it's clever. So, be a responsible citizen, properly dispose of your dog's waste. And then there's a picture of a dog's business and a Tesla Cybertruck. Then it says, place it into the nearest Cybertruck. If you see Elon Musk, you may also deposit directly into his mouth. And then it has a city code, as if it's not real, Department of, and then City of New York. So it's a clever sign. So on one level, this represents the usual official municipal signs of being a responsible citizen, working for social good, cleaning up your own waste. And there are signs like this about dog's business all over the city, and they make sense. What connections are made here, which are interesting, is that the Cybertruck is really a dumpster for doggy business, and it sort of devalues the car's value. And the car plays, the Cybertruck is a very expensive car. We're talking about an $80,000 to $100,000 car. Was presented as a high value status symbol, and what this sign really does is devalue that investment so that you might want to get rid of it. And once again, it's the same as the previous. It's the idea is to make Elon Musk suffer by people not buying these cars. Now let's look at a more governmental version of this. So this is in the US Agency for International Development. It's the Ronald Reagan building. You can see across the entrance to the city, to the building, US Agency for International Development, and then you can see outside 1000 Pennsylvania Avenue, very famous address, US Agency for International Development. Under the Trump government, there was an erasure of USAID signage and of USAID completely. So on the signboard itself, you can see they just put black masking tape or duct tape perhaps on top of it. But then they actually had a worker come out to remove the sign so that there will be no mention of USAID development, because apparently it's offensive to Donald Trump. But then you see the response to that. So the US Agency for International Development, which has a long history of helping people around the world, feeding children, doing a lot of really basic good work in helping people. Someone has come along and removed the duct tape so that the US Agency for International Development emerges, and then they put some stickers here. One is the sticker for, with the shaking hands of helping others, and another is a direct attack on Trump as a racist, rapist, fascist, terrorist, misogynist, and narcissist. So the erasure is now situated within the series of negative moral attributes that can be assigned to Donald Trump and his actions. Now, it's not in all cases that we're talking about large discourses and large narratives. We also have our own personal discursive meanings, which of course attach to social discourses as well. So in the picture, what you have here is a wedding at the Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, which I highly recommend visiting, by the way. It's an absolutely beautiful site. And to have a wedding there must be really a lovely thing. It's a place where you have flowers. There's a history there of culture. There's a history there of horticulture. And then, of course, we see this happy couple getting married. So on the one hand, there's a personal history that happens here. But then, of course, there's a very long discourse about what marriage is, what it means, how it fits into societal norms. What it means to get married is, of course, in itself a large discourse which has a very long history. But that doesn't take away from the personal meaning of this. It just means that there are layers upon layers, as is always true with the discursive genealogy, in creating the meanings that we live with. And one final example of personal discursive meaning, once again, personal events in the past. This is a picture of the cemetery in Squirrel Hill. You have a picture of someone standing by one of the graves and having a quick ceremony in front of it, and the other is just a picture of the cemetery during the winter. But of course, if you go to a burial at the site, or if you know people at the site, or if you have a family member at the site, you have a burial ceremony of whatever type, these are deeply meaningful personal experiences. And once again, as I said about weddings, there's a whole discourse of how we bury people, what we understand about death, what we understand about people passing on, or in some cases not passing on. There's a history here. So once again, a very layered event. And for people who have buried relatives, going to the cemetery, being at the site is quite a sacred thing. It's a sacred site in many ways, with deep personal discursive meanings. With that, I'm going to end this particular lecture, but what I would like you to take away from this is this sense of everything around us, every sign, every place we go. We have what is present to us, but then we have a whole range of much deeper meanings which we're tying into. And it's this historical discourse which often gives this deep sense of meaning at a place. And with that, I'll see you in our next video.